You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. Very happy today to have with us Sarah Carter. For those of you who may not know Sarah, she is a national and international award-winning investigative reporter whose stories have ranged from national security, terrorism, immigration, and frontline coverage of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Sarah Carter, she actually speaks Spanish fluently. She's the daughter of a Cuban immigrant mother, and her dad was a Marine and a veteran of two wars. She's currently an investigative reporter and Fox News contributor. She's married to a war hero, an incredible husband. He was blinded while on a mission fighting terrorists in Afghanistan for the Defense Department. This gal is really something else. You guys are going to love her. I mean, this is a woman who has been sent to cover news in so many hazardous places, and that requires courage and perseverance. This lady is super smart. She's fierce, and she knows her stuff. Did you know that she's also known as Sarah Carter, the Rebel? To learn more about Sarah Carter, check out her website at sarahacarter.com. And I think after hearing from her today, you'll want to subscribe to her podcast as well, The Sarah Carter Show. So check her out at sarahacarter.com and subscribe to her podcast. We'll be right back with Sarah Carter. Hello, everyone. Just a quick side note. Did you know that the Better for America podcast is also available on iTunes and Spotify? Every week, an audio version of this podcast is also available for you to listen to and share. It's a fun and easy way to stay up to date with all of the latest news and the benefits that AMAC has to offer you. And if you like the show and you love AMAC, I implore you to go on over to iTunes or Spotify and subscribe to the show. Rate and review us as well. This would really help us boost our show's standing, which helps us greatly because we want to make sure that this show is not censored. With greater recognition comes greater benefits for members like you. So please click the link below or search for us in the iTunes app. And thank you so much for listening to AMAC's podcast, Better for America. So boy, I am so excited to have with us Sarah Carter. Welcome, Sarah, to the show.
Oh, I'm so excited to be with you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me on. AMAC. Yes.
It is so great. It is so great to have you here. And for our listeners who may not know too much about you, I want to let them know you are an investigative reporter, a Fox News contributor. And as a news reporter, you have gone outside your comfort zone to ensure that the world gets truthful information, which is why I love your podcast. Now, Sarah traveled far and wide to ensure that accurate information is presented in the media, which is great. Her investigative reports have won regional, state, national, and international recognition. Sarah grew up in Saudi Arabia, and she's traveled extensively throughout the Middle East, Africa, Europe, Mexico. She has spent more than 7 months in Afghanistan and Pakistan since 2008. I mean, this gal embedded with troops on Afghanistan's border with Pakistan and spent days with them while being mortared and shot out by Taliban insurgents hiding in the hillside. So this is a really tough lady, a very smart lady, and she goes by Sarah Carter, aka the Rebel. Sarah, again, thank you for joining us today. It is so good to see you. And the world seems like such a crazy place these days, doesn't it? I mean, what we're witnessing, I scratch my head when I wake up in the morning, and it just doesn't seem like the same place that we were living in just a few short years ago. You have so much substantial knowledge about the, Mexican cartel and gangs in Southern California, and your investigative work actually won you multiple awards and recognition. So I want our listeners to hear a little bit about your thoughts on Biden's recent rollback or reversal of Trump's policies, specifically the immediate termination of funding for the border wall construction. Sarah, what do you think that's going to do to our country? I'm concerned, and I think everybody listening should be very concerned.
First, Rebecca, thank you so much. That was such a great intro. And yes, AKA Rebel would be my husband's nickname for me. So, but it's true. I mean, I think spending a lot of time overseas and spending time in other nations where, the systems of government are just broken, where there's corruption. If we're looking at Mexico, and you specifically brought up my work in Mexico, that is some of the work I'm most proud of along the US-Mexico border for two reasons. For the United States and our national security, and of course, our country and the implications of, large scale immigration, influx of immigration, but also for the people that are on the other side. I speak Spanish. My mother was a Cuban immigrant. She came to the United States in the 1960s. I am very familiar with the Latin culture, with the Mexican culture, Central America. I love it. My husband and I would vacation there quite often. But the thing is that it's almost like a shadow state. A narco war is taking place in Mexico, and throughout Central America and even South America, it's become very dangerous. We're seeing, with the children, especially that are coming to the United States, the unaccompanied minors, a large increase in rape. There's exposure to pedophiles. There's issues that are human rights issues. That go far beyond. This isn't just about bring me your poor, you're hungry, right? We get that.
Right.
We're America. We are the most generous nation on planet Earth. We want people to come to us.
We want to welcome people. Sure.
We're all immigrants.
The legal way. Yeah, the legal way.
The legal way, because when you do things the legal way, these organizations, these nefarious, evil, I call them evil organizations, there is nothing like them. You mentioned the war, it was easy for me to say, okay, this is the bad guy, this is the good guy.
Right.
It's not that easy anymore.
Sure,
and these nefarious organizations have blended into the governments. They've blended in. They've corrupted people on our side of the border. They've corrupted people on their side of the border. So when you think of the Biden administration and you hear from Democrats, even some Republicans, we want to welcome people. We're a nation of immigrants. There shouldn't be any borders. There is no border. That's a lie. That is a lie, because it endangers everyone. It endangers us. It endangers the people that are being trafficked and the children that are being trafficked. If you really care about the people in Central America and Mexico, if you really care about them, you will put a stop to that. You will not embolden, and I'm talking about the government now, the administration, the Biden administration, embolden the drug cartels and the human traffickers and the child traffickers that are making billions of dollars poisoning our children in the United States with their drugs and basically taking advantage of some of the most desperate people in the world. It's wrong. And that's the way we need to handle it as Republicans and as Americans. We need to look at this as a human rights issue.
That's a great point, because it is real. And a lot of people, we're so blessed to be here in the United States of America. We have so many freedoms that we take advantage of, or take for granted, I should say, each and every day. Mm-hmm. And others want to come into our great country to really enjoy the luxuries that our freedoms afford us. But if we don't recognize what's out there and what we can become and what can happen, this is why HR 1, and I know our listeners are paying attention to HR 1, which is this huge 600-page bill that really is concerned about. I want to talk about HR 1 with you, specifically how that could affect censorship. But sticking with the your work that you did in the U.S. on the Mexico border, what I love about what you did is that it really did pave a way. It cleared a path for people to hear these stories and for people to understand and uncover the involvement of these federal officials in drug trade. But one of the things that I'm also concerned, and you mentioned it just a few moments ago, and that is the human trafficking. So I think that when the Biden administration wants people like you and I to just not talk about it, and we want to just embrace everybody and love everybody, that sounds great, but that sounds like heaven. It doesn't sound like earth. And it certainly doesn't sound like how a country needs borders to be a country, for goodness sakes. But human drug trafficking, that is real. And I'd like for you to explain to our listeners the things that you've seen and have heard and written and reported on, because it really is something that we need to know about.
Right. It is something that we need to know about. I covered early on in my career, one of the biggest issues that I felt wasn't getting enough attention was the U.S. Mexico border, and this is almost 2 decades ago. And I had been reporting on basically social justice issues inside, our communities in California. Drugs, gangs, whether that be, children afflicted by drugs and gangs in our communities that would cross over and harm people in other communities. It was all of our problem. We had police officers that were shot, and one that was killed by a 15-year-old. I'll never forget that. It was schools that weren't teaching our children and are still failing to do so. You have kids going up to their junior year in high school and can't even read, a menu at Jack in the Box. I remember that being one of the stories. So eventually that led me, I was saying, look, we've got an enormous amount of drugs on our streets. Our children are being affected by this. What can we do to cover the stories? Because I know the drugs are coming in from Mexico. I went all the way over to the US Mexico border, started covering those stories. And what I uncovered to me was shocking. What was more shocking, Rebecca, was that the US government would always, whether it was a Republican, whether it was a Democrat, I would always hear the same stories over and over again. Thankfully, the Republicans, especially when they were in leadership, would investigate these immigration issues, would call hearings, but it was very slow, the process, and we still see the same problems for the first time. For the first time, I can say, during the Trump administration, because I covered the Bush administration, Obama administration, I knew what happened in the Clinton administrations. But for the first time, somebody was saying, okay, wait a minute. We need to put up a wall. The wall is important. I know people don't understand this completely all the time. A wall allows our law enforcement officials to focus on particular areas of the border because it stops the flow of traffic in areas that had seen high concentrations of traffic. This isn't just about people. This is about contraband, drugs, smuggling of anything. I mean, we don't even know what it is. And
Sure.
now we're getting fentanyl into our country. These blue Mexican pills that could actually kill someone when they take it right away. A lot of young people think it's Oxycontin.
Sure.
They imagine
You
it's
don't know
something
what you're
else.
taking.
Right. Right. And it's
Jeez.
poisoning our children. It's poisoning our country. It's making us a country of extraordinary addicts. We're seeing things we've never seen before. And so this allows our law enforcement, Border Patrol officials, DEA to focus on particular parts of the border where they'll say, okay, we know this area is pretty much closed off. We might
Sure.
have this type of traffic, but we can focus here. Now you knock down this wall, you take away the rules, you stop that. Guess what the drug cartels are doing right now? I can tell you this because I'm talking to people in Guatemala. I am talking to people in Mexico. They are watching the traffic move. Thousands of people because they believe that President Biden is opening the floodgates for
They do.
amnesty. For amnesty, what's he going to do? He's already told
Yeah.
them, we're not going to send you back.
Yeah.
I can also tell you before we move on, one thing, I was talking to ICE officials, Border Patrol officials as well. This is, I'm not going to give names right here because of the sourcing, because a lot of people are very concerned, but they're not sending people back. So when they're kicking them out of prison, for example, let's say you've arrested somebody who's an illegal immigrant, right? For meth, being a meth manufacturer in the United States, or for a child molestation. Guess what's happening? They are releasing them back into U.S. streets. They're not sending them right now under Biden. They're not sending them back into Mexico or to Guatemala. They're just kicking them out of prison right into the U.S. streets.
Yeah. And
So-
that's not who we want our children around. That's not who we want our families around. These are bad people. Who in
Right.
their very right mind would want these people just put back out in the streets?
Right.
And we've got to know that this is happening in order to do something about it. And in order to, educate Americans many who just are quite very busy working and putting food on the table and worried about the pandemic. And they're not really maybe able to make time to pay attention to these things.
Right.
It's so good that you're sharing this. Just unbelievable. I think that, it seems like all of the executive orders that we see sweeping through, it's almost like I don't know. It's an excuse. It's a poor way to legislate, in my opinion, because he's done so much in a very short period of time, and he uses this restore fairness is like something that I keep hearing out of the Biden administration, equity, equality for all. But I think fully understand, and most right-minded people understand that you can never guarantee equality of outcome. So if you and I have the same opportunity, Sarah, I don't know if at the end, if we're going to achieve the exact same success or same level of success. So I'm concerned about the narrative that the young people are hearing all about unity and fairness. What do you think America can expect to see happen with this? I mean, do you think in 2 years that people are going to recognize that we've got to get rid of some people that are doing some pretty extreme things? I'm hopeful, but I'm also concerned about the censorship.
Right.
I want your
Huge.
thoughts on that.
It's huge. Rebecca, I am very concerned about it. And this idea that we are not an equitable nation, that there is no equality is so far from the truth. It's so wrong. It's disinformation. It's a lie. Things have not been perfect in this nation, as they have not been in many other nations in history of civilizations, right? I mean, you can study anthropology and archaeology and history and discover the brutality of civilizations of the past. My fear, though, is with this type of disinformation campaign, this type of propaganda, it divides our nation so much so it doesn't heal it. And remember, this is part of the communist ploy. I always call this the communist socialist ploy. It's trying to say, like, these people are keeping you down. You need to rise up against this. You need to be radicals. You need to march. You need to fight them. It's always about pitting one group against another.
Against the other.
Not saying we're all Americans. We together have to resolve our issues together as a family, as one nation, right?
I love that. Yeah.
They want to divide us. I mean, when my father went to war, and I'm sure a lot of our parents, who served in the military, my father fought in World War II and the Korean War. My husband served his entire career, retired from the Army.
He's a hero.
He's a hero, served as a special operator. Yeah. Yeah. He gave up his eyes, but this is the thing. He fought with it didn't matter what religion, what color, where you were from, where you were born, whether you were wealthy, whether you were poor.
Right.
They were a band, like they like to say, band of brothers, right? A band together, a family fighting for each other. And right.
That's right.
It didn't matter. I want to see that back in our communities and in our country. And what we are seeing is a far greater divide. One that actually frightens me, because you brought up censorship. And my gosh, I believe, and I believe we all are watching, what happened to other nations when our rights are being stripped from us, when we can't speak freely, but in a weirder way, right? It's not like the government is coming in. It's like the government is working together with some of the most powerful entities on our planet, the big tech.
That's right.
And I honestly, it's a global issue now, because this isn't just about America, but it is for me. But it's all over the planet, where we're not going to be able to say what we feel. We're not going to be able to question anything that the government doesn't feel we can question. HR 1, you brought it up. It's, For the People's Act. What is it? It wants
very deceptive. That is so deceptive. I get very frustrated that they use that tagline, For the People's Act. It is nothing but For the People's Act. I want to read off a couple of things here.
Right.
This bill is so bad. Essentially what it's going to do is it will directly threaten our First Amendment. This bill violates the privacy of advocacy groups like AMAC, even if this bill is passed. And to those of our supporters, this is a bill that's going to threaten the way in which we communicate, the way in which we provide honest information. I'm so concerned that it's an overreach to such a far degree that it doesn't seem American. It doesn't sound like America. It sounds beyond socialism. It sounds like China when you really get into some of the details. And then on the voting side of the election side of things, they want to just immediate. They want mail-in ballots. No problem. We're not going to verify them. They want to start signing folks at 16, 17 years old to vote. I mean, all the things that they want to do really is illegals. Of course, the list goes on. We've got to watch. AMAC is very much on this issue, Sarah. We've just signed a letter opposing. We've sent this letter to Speaker Pelosi and, McCarthy and Schumer and the rest. And we're really trying to educate people to understand what is in this bill. It's very, very dangerous. And that brings me to something I wanted to talk to you about, censorship, because you have such a great voice and you do so much good and you're getting the truth out there. What can we do to ensure that our voice is not silenced? I keep saying we got to talk more, but and we got to make sure that we're talking to our neighbors, our friends, have, at the kitchen table over a cup of tea. We've got to let people know what's really happening out there. We can't get complacent. I'm afraid that we could get complacent. But these conservative voices, the hushing of conservative voices is of great concern. The MyPillow guy, who everybody loves him. Everybody loves Mike Lindell.
I love Mike. He's like a friend of mine. And I'm just like, how did this happen? Like Mike can't say how he feels, because all of a sudden he's going to be shut down. Look, even if you disagree, even if you think everything was perfect in the election, and we've all come to the conclusion, okay, Biden is the president of these United States of America. Why can't Mike Lindell speak his mind? What is it that frightens the left so much about Mike Lindell saying, whoa, wait a minute? Because I got to tell you this, Rebecca, from the moment that President Trump was elected, Hillary Clinton and the gang said he was an illegitimate president, said that the election wasn't real. Nobody got censored. None of them. It was all over the place. John Brennan was saying President Trump is a clear and present danger. This is the former head of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, the most powerful intelligence agency on planet Earth. The former director called his own president a clear and present danger. He wasn't censored. He wasn't told that was insurrection, that was verging on sedition. This is the problem that we have. And when you talk about fear, I get it. I'm as worried as you, because if HR 1 passes, oh gosh, we have never seen such a brazen attack on our freedom of speech. And furthermore, I think AMAC's doing the right thing and fighting that and ensuring that, that does not happen. But I mean, who knows? But I got to tell you this, they removed Parler. Look at what they've done to Dan Bongino.
Isn't that terrible? And here's who are they to say that you can't? Yeah. And then
But wait, let me tell you this. I thought when YouTube demonetized me, by the way, this is kind of news, but YouTube demonetized me this past week, sent a letter saying that I was going to be demonetized. Not that I make that much on there, but whatever, it's YouTube. Right?
They're saying, watch out.
I just post it. They're saying, watch out. That's what you off. We're going to pull you off of YouTube. So I said, well, could you explain what is wrong with my podcast? What is it that you're looking at? Do you know they wouldn't explain it, but there was one video. And it had nothing to do with the election. It had nothing to do with President Biden. It had nothing to do with an interview with Rudy Giuliani. I've always been very careful to just tell the facts, right? It had to do with a girl by the name of Yoko Ishii, who was a freedom fighter for her and my friend in Hong Kong, Andy Chan, who led the Hong Kong National Party, by the way, for freedom against China, and who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. YouTube said that video needed to be removed from there. And so this tells me that China has a say in our freedom of speech too. That is my big concern.
My big concern too, Sarah. I mean, I just want to remind people we're fighting. AMAC is fighting. Sarah's getting the word out there. HR 1 will do things in addition to further censorship, which is really what HR 1 will do. It'll fully allow YouTube to say, nope, you can't do that. It violates our policies, and they'll draw policies that work for them, but not necessarily for America. HR 1 will also allow, I wanted to read this off, nationwide online voter registration with minimal verification, same-day registration, nationwide legalization of ballot harvesting, nationwide registration of your 16-year-olds, nationwide availability of mail-in ballots with minimal qualifications, nationwide restoration of felon voting rights. The list goes on. That, in addition to the sweeping changes that would occur in the way in which information can be published and the way that we will be censored is why we've got to do something about this. And AMAC is hard at work. Sarah, I am so very grateful that you've joined us today. You've got some really great stories to share. I would love to have you back. I mean, you've really been there literally in the trenches. You've exposed yourself to some not so pretty stuff in order to get the truth out. And so I applaud you and I thank you so much. I want our listeners to learn more about you by going to your website at Sarah A. Carter, CARTER.com, SarahACarter.com. And definitely subscribe to her podcast. I love it. The Sarah Carter Show. And your podcast is everywhere, Sarah. They can find it on iTunes and Spotify.
iTunes, Spreaker, wherever you listen to your podcast, you can find the Sarah Carter Show.
Well, that is wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us and for your good advice and your good words, and keep up the great fight, Sarah.
Oh, you too. Thank you, AMAC, for all you do. And thank you, Rebecca, for having me on the show. And I look forward to being back on.
Wonderful. And to all you out there listening, we look forward to having you back with us next time on AMAC's podcast, Better for America.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.